civil justice reform is one of the things that, if you have a good, fair legal system in the state, everybody with the same chance, then you have a better business climate, which brings more jobs to the state. And we believe we need more jobs and not more lawsuits. The lawsuits and all that go with them, that's just a drain from not only new jobs, but also from the state coffers and from individual businesses in many cases who are included in lawsuits where they never should have been included in the first place. They have to hire the lawyers, and they spend a fortune on that. And then at the end of the day, they're out of the suit. And that happens all the time.
Unfortunately, Louisiana has a growing reputation as a state with a very negative legal climate. In recent years, we've been called out on the national stage many times by a variety of different organizations for our legal climate, and it's not in a very positive way. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Institute for Legal Reform has ranked Louisiana 49th out of all 50 states for legal fairness. We've been described by the American Tort Reform Association as a judicial hellhole. We've also been described as a magnet for mass tort lawyers and a hotbed for legal theories, for new legal theories. This is not the kind of reputation that makes us attractive to businesses and industries that are looking to grow and expand here in Louisiana. And that's what we're most concerned about. We are very concerned about the state of Louisiana's legal climate because of the impact that it has on jobs and our economy.
Fraud and abuse is also bad within the trust system, because if people are able to make claims against the trust based on stories that they're telling that may not be fully truthful, they're going to be depleting those trust assets. Well, that's important to people that come along with a legitimate illness, that have a legitimate claim against that former manufacturer, and that need to get paid adequate and timely recoveries. And they may not get that if people filing untruthful claims deplete the assets that they need to pay them. So people with legitimate claims also hurt when fraud and abuse is permitted under the system. It's important to companies to be fair, but it's also important to legitimate victims that have legitimate trust claims, that they don't get shorted on what's coming to them because somebody else filed an untruthful claim and took their money from them.
The Coalition for Common Sense is talking about many of the important bills that will be introduced in this upcoming legislative session in a couple of weeks, and very important bills that will help to improve the legal environment in Louisiana, and most importantly, create more jobs and not lawsuits in our state.
You do a good faith investigation of who you have claims against. You provide in the statement who those companies are, when you're going to file your claim, and then when the claim is filed, that claim form that you file with the trust and any medical documentation and exposure history documentation you file to support it gets produced into evidence, and that's admissible at trial. This is what courts across the country are doing. This is what is being done in a number of states across the country. I was in Massachusetts last week, and there the plaintiff and defense bar came together and negotiated a change to their case management order to do this kind of thing. This is not something that's unprecedented, that's difficult, or that's unfair. Simply telling people that they need to tell the truth and be open and upfront about who they're suing is just common sense. And there's now legislation, that we had a hearing in Texas a couple weeks ago. There's a bill that was passed in January out of the Ohio House of Representatives. There's going to be a hearing before the Ohio Senate Judiciary Committee in a couple of weeks. Legislation along these lines also came out of a Oklahoma Senate committee a few weeks ago, and maybe on the Oklahoma Senate floor later this month or next month. So by joining this effort, you are part of the legal mainstream.
Well, the impacts are very significant. Just yesterday, there was a study conducted by an economist at LSU that showed the impact of legacy lawsuits as having on the industry. It's resulted in a loss of over 30,000 jobs in recent years. That's very significant. No state in the country, in this particular economy where we are experiencing a recession, can afford to lose 30,000 jobs, and certainly not here in Louisiana. Louisiana. We need to do more things to improve our legal climate, to cut down on frivolous litigation and the abuse of our courts so that we can bring more jobs and more opportunities to Louisiana, not less. As many of you know, abusive lawsuits and the abuse of our courts continue to be a key driver of the problems plaguing our economy. Too often, frivolous lawsuits are putting our small businesses, our small companies out of business and contributing to the rising costs of the things that we need the most, like health care and auto insurance. This is true not just in Louisiana, but all across the country. As many of you know, Louisiana has become the subject of increasing national focus as a state with an unfair legal climate. These are some of the statistics, some of which we've discussed before. Louisiana's ranked 49th out of all 50 states in the country in 2010 by a survey that was conducted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. In particular, New Orleans ranked among the 10 least fair and reasonable court systems in the United States. We've been described by the Manhattan Institute and other organizations as a magnet for mass tort lawyers and a hotbed for new legal theories. And continuing the recent trend of bad news, unfortunately, with regard to our legal climate. In the very end of last year, ATRA, the American Tort Reform Association, released their new report on judicial hellholes across the country, and we were highlighted on their watch list. So clearly, we have a bad reputation, and this reputation as a potential judicial hellhole should be a concern to every policymaker and citizen in the state that's hoping to bring more jobs and a stronger economy. Louisiana has been called out on the national stage, as I mentioned, numerous times for its poor legal climate. And whether we like it or not, reputations matter. As I know all of you in this room are very much aware, the perception of a state's legal climate affects how companies do business and where they decide to invest and create new jobs. But it's not just national groups that say lawsuit abuse is a problem in our state. Individuals and small business owners who live and work in Louisiana recognize that lawsuit abuse is a significant problem. In a recent survey that was conducted by Southern Media and Opinion Research found that voters all across the political spectrum and from all parts of our state believe that abusive lawsuits are hurting our state's economy. And these are a few of the specific examples. 8 in 10 voters believe reform is desperately needed. 2/3 believe there are too many lawsuits. 70% believe lawsuit abuse costs jobs and hurts our state's economy. And 85% believe that personal injury lawyer ads encourage people to sue, and that the vast majority of plaintiffs' attorneys are taking advantage of natural disasters to pursue frivolous litigation. In addition to increasing public concern about the impact of lawsuits on jobs and our economy, we also know that civil litigation is growing rapidly in our state. New data from the Louisiana Supreme Court shows that civil filings in our city and parish courts have increased more than 26% over the last 5 years. That's a pretty significant increase. A listing of tort activity measures recently put out by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce also shows that Louisiana has the highest concentration of lawyers per citizen, and also the second highest number of tort suits per person in the region. These statistics clearly demonstrate that litigation is a growing industry in Louisiana, but obviously it's not the type of industry that we need to grow. And of course, the correlation to that is with growing litigation, we're also seeing an increase in tort costs for individuals, doctors, and businesses. New data also from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce demonstrates that Louisiana has some of the highest tort costs in the region. And so the important part on this slide is the total tort cost for Louisiana, which actually represents $3.2 billion. And of that $3.2 billion, 26% of that, it's estimated, are directly linked to the state's poor legal climate. So clearly, we have a lot of room for improvement in terms of improving our state's legal environment, and that can have a significant impact on the amount we spend on litigation and certainly on our economy. So at the same time, we're seeing an increase in tort cases and tort costs. We're seeing a significant decrease in the number of civil jury trials in Louisiana. Court data from 2000 to 2010 shows that the number of civil jury trials in district courts only represent a very, very small fraction of the actual number of cases filed. Jury trial threshold in is essentially, as a practical matter, denying citizens of their fundamental right to a trial before a jury. A recent analysis, which we actually are releasing today, it's an update on previous data that was conducted by LABI. Our new data shows that of all the 50 states, the vast majority do not have thresholds, and among the 14 that do, Louisiana's threshold is by far the highest in the nation. At $50,000, Louisiana's jury trial threshold is more than 28 times the national average. And the current threshold was more than doubled back in 1993 from $20,000 to its current level, and it probably comes as no surprise to many of you in the room who may have lobbied the legislature at the time. It was heavily supported by the Louisiana Trial Lawyers Association and ultimately signed into law by then Governor Edwin Edwards. Obviously, this is very bad policy that needs to be corrected. The practical impact of the threshold, and I'll be a little more blunt than I think maybe Representative Landry was that it essentially puts more power into the hands of Louisiana's elected judges. And in many instances, we believe it encourages a culture of venue shopping, where some attorneys who work in contingency fee, where their money is directly based on court outcomes, seek out judges who have an established track record of ruling in favor of plaintiffs. And while I would suggest to you that most of our state's judges are fair and reasonable and uphold themselves to the highest of ethical standards, it's certainly clear that at times many of our judges may be subject to an element of political power, of political pressure that juries do not experience. And so I would suggest to you that removing or lowering the threshold will certainly allow more citizens to participate in the process and give all the parties involved in court proceedings the opportunity to have their issues decided by citizens rather than a single elected judge. I'm personally thankful to Representative Landry for introducing a bill that will do just that, and I hope that you all will join myself and the Coalition for Common Sense in giving him your full support on this important piece of legislation. To conclude today, I'll just say, clearly Louisiana's legal climate is a challenging one, and it's imperative that we take reasonable and common sense steps to improve it. Abusive lawsuits are costing our state good jobs, and putting an end to lawsuit abuse can help create jobs and support the businesses that drive our economy forward. We know from the reforms that have been passed in our neighboring states that tort reform really does work. Texas is a shining example of how they've worked to improve their legal climate, and as a result, they're a very attractive place to do business. I think we can learn from that. And I think the other part of it that's very important too is that with folks like Representative Landry and Representative Abramson, who's going to handle some of our asbestos reforms bill that we discussed earlier today, with leaders such as those and others in the legislature, I think that we now is a critical opportunity, to move some of these things forward.
Well, during the session, they could get in touch with their legislator and talk about the need for civil justice reform in the state, how we need to lower the jury trial threshold, how we need to have other fair legislative instruments passed.
Citizens can do a variety of things to get involved. First and foremost, they can go to our website, call us, join our organization, which is Louisiana Lawsuit Abuse Watch. Our website is llaw.org. They can help us, and they can serve as a voice in the fight against lawsuit abuse. They can get actively involved in supporting a whole variety of reform bills that are being introduced in the upcoming legislative session. They can pay attention to what's going on. They can contact their lawmakers in support of these reforms, and contact their lawmakers to let them know that they're very concerned about the impact that lawsuit abuse is having on our economy.